Welcome to Certain Point of View, your first step into a much nerdier world. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com. Thanks. And now your hosts, Ben Milton and Addy Thomas.
Hey, Nerf Herders, I'm Addy Thomas.
And I am Ben Milton.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Certain Point of View. Today we're on a little bit of a delay because we're recording online, but I'm sure you won't notice it too badly, right?
No, I don't think so. I barely notice it.
And waiting. Oh, yeah, that's right, Ben.
3, 2, 1, pause, respond. Well, Tom, weather's really picking up here.
Well, despite whatever delays are not happening, actually, on this podcast, don't forget to check out the new setup for Certain Point of View. You may no longer hear all of our D20 episodes, cases, and other past episodes on this particular feed. You will, however, still hear those episodes on their own separate feeds. Scruffy Nerf Herders, which is the D20 Star Wars RPG game, Dungeons & Dragons style, that's getting its own feed. And another Past Cases show where he revisits a movie and tweaks it up a bit with a guest. That's also going to be getting its own feed as well. You can expect about 2 episodes a month from those feeds, but you'll still hear me and Ben giving our weird off-the-wall opinions on the nerd world and the latest news every Tuesday on this particular feed. So subscribe to all of them. Subscribe to the ones that you like best. We'd prefer if that was all of them, but now you know exactly what to expect on each of those feeds instead of like suddenly getting in another past episode when you were hoping for a D20 episode. You'll get exactly what you're wanting when you want it. So all of that, again, you can find all of that information on our website, certainpov.com. All our social media is there. Subscription information is all there, certainpov.com. Today we're going to talk about Kingsman 2. Saw it a couple days ago. And you know what? We'll do something a little bit different here, Ben.
Okay.
I know like our show is definitely a spoiler-heavy show. But let's just do a quick like 2-3 minute review without any spoilers. So really, really general. So if anybody wants to hear the first couple minutes of this episode and then come back, they still get an idea of like if somehow, and maybe I'm just thinking way too highly of us right now, but maybe somebody was waiting on our opinion before they went to see a movie. Sorry.
I want to meet that person.
I know, right?
I really want to meet that person because we need to have a talk about some life decisions that they have going on.
You need to have your own life, man. There might be other podcasts you need to listen to help build up some self-image. But
Tony Robbins is a good place to start,
right? But Kingsman 2. So, what are your sort of quick thoughts, headline thoughts?
Man, it picks up and expounds on all the things that you loved about the first Kingsman movie, and just expounds on that and makes that even bigger, even better. And all the things that I loved about the very first one. And the first one was a complete surprise to me. I didn't see it in the theaters. I barely knew it was out in theaters. I hadn't really heard any buzz about it. And then I just happened to catch it one day on HBO. And I was like, what is this movie? This is incredible. I didn't even know that Mark Millar had written that it was a comic book. Like, it was completely out of left field for me for whatever reason. It had never crossed my radar. Or if it did, I just completely dismissed it. And I was like so enthralled by that first movie. Well, the second one, I think, is just as good. And it's not as surprising because you've already kind of been exposed to that world. But it really builds that world out in a really refreshing and exciting way. And you know, you continue to follow Eggsy on this journey. And if you've seen the trailers, you know pretty much the plot synopsis. Like, it's pretty simple, but it's very satisfying.
So my spoiler-free version is definitely kind of in the same path as yours. I really liked it. It got a little slow for me at times. I think a lot of that is just because of how fresh and surprising the first movie was, while this movie is definitely really good and is definitely a worthy addition. It's reminded me a lot of Kick-Ass 2, also I don't remember if I know Matthew Vaughn directed the first Kick-Ass movie. Don't remember if he directed the second one.
I don't think he did. I think he only did the first one.
Right, but both Kingsman and Kick-Ass are both Mark Millar properties. And there's a certain level of shock value. There's some great action that both are able to do, and there's some really good character work too. This one though, I don't know if it's just there were a couple key elements that are so memorable for the first one that this kind of falls a little bit into the shadow of the first, but it's still a worthy addition. It's definitely a great follow-up. I think it was definitely worth seeing in the theaters, especially because Matthew Vaughn directs action like nobody else does.
It's a very distinctive style. You're right. Yeah.
And I just remember every time I've watched his action scenes, especially after seeing the travesty that was Iron Fist, I'm just watching that. And yes, Matthew Vaughn's, but what he does with a budget probably isn't going to work on TV. But man, if Iron Fist is ever redone and is done cinematically, he's done on the big screen, Matthew Vaughn's the guy I want working on it.
For sure.
Well, let's go ahead and get into the spoilers. We're just going to give you a little bit of a countdown here so you can turn this off. For some reason, you're on the other side of the room. You're fumbling and you're tripping over everything to get to stop whatever is playing this. We're giving you some more time, but we're definitely going to dig into this movie a little bit more. So 5, 4, spoilers in 3, 2, and seriously, turn this off. 1. All right, spoilers from here on out. So I think Samuel L. Jackson was a huge part of the appeal for the first movie to me. Villain was good, but not quite as interesting to me.
Not quite as memorable.
Yeah.
Not quite as memorable.
I don't know if it's just Samuel L. Jackson with a lisp.
Samuel L. Jackson with a lisp was so surprising and so much fun.
Yeah.
And like this villain, Poppy, is just as much over the top and just as silly.
Yeah.
But Julianne Moore doesn't have Julianne Moore, even with her quirky, super cheery, over the top, happy 50s angry stewing
right.
Woman is not the same as a lisping Samuel L. Jackson, no matter what you do.
Right.
You just can't possibly match that. It can't be done.
I think it's his charisma in that first, and I don't want to spend the whole podcast just praising Samuel L. Jackson, but there were so many new nuances to him, like his love for McDonald's, his fear of blood, and the big moment when he kills Colin Firth's character for the monologue, which is the big shift for what usually happens in a Bond movie, was a really cool shift for for a spy movie. So.
Right.
Julianne Moore didn't really have one of those big moments like that. Not that she needed it, but she definitely had a great disturbing moment when she has one of her henchmen earn his keep by putting the guy who recruited him into a grinder and then eat that burger made of that dude, which was super messed up. So she's a great villain. She
super villain.
She definitely checks the boxes for a good super villain. So it's not that it was bad. I think it was just that Samuel L. Jackson was just so freaking memorable.
So good. It was so good. Yeah, this movie wasn't ruined by Julianne Moore or that character by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
This movie wasn't ruined by anything. It
was tainted by one thing, I will say, though.
Okay, what was that?
Something we actually discussed on one of the recently recorded Certain Point of View episodes that Matthew Vaughn was complaining about.
Reveal.
Yeah, the big reveal that Colin Firth's character is alive did take suck some emotional weight out of a big surprise moment. A big reveal, and that reveal is a major plot thread in this story. It's a huge emotional through line for this about Eggsy and a father figure and trying to pull him back, and which is it is a very well done arc, but because that surprise is taken away from you, it's not that it doesn't hold as much weight, but it does take some.
It's that it doesn't hold as much weight.
Yeah, I guess it does. I was trying to find some other way of explaining it, and I didn't have it.
No, it's because that's exactly what it was. Yeah, and it is the entire second act.
Yeah.
of this movie is that story. So to have that taken away and to have that kind of like, all right, I kind of knew this was happening. What it does is it makes the film drag a little bit in the middle.
Yeah.
Because you're not as emotionally invested in some of those scenes where it was a complete surprise. I mean, they did a great job of not mentioning it at any point in pre-production that Colin Firth was in this movie. And then all of a sudden you see him in the trailer and you're like, what the hell? Like, okay. So to not have him, to have him in that movie and then have it spoiled that way is a huge disservice to that plot. And it did make it drag a little bit in the middle. That is the only thing that I felt was a problem with this film. But it wasn't so bad where I was like, oh my God, I'm so bored. Like, I was just like, okay, let's get to the next point because I already kind of saw this coming.
Right. What did you think? So action wise, we got a little bit into it. Anything stand out particularly for you?
Honest to God, the opening scene was the best scene in the entire movie.
Yeah.
That car chase with Prince's "Let's Go Crazy" was amazing.
Yeah.
That was amazing, and the song was perfect. I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this. I'm gonna get a lot of grief for this. I'm glad Prince is dead. Because now we can get his music in movies. I get it on Spotify. It's so fantastic. That guy was so notoriously tight with what he would allow people to do with his music. It's fantastic to have it out there in pop culture being used by other people because it just added such a great fun flavor to that entire car chase. I mean, it was perfect. It was perfect. That car chase is so much fun. And you saw a little bit of it in the trailer, but the the whole sequence and how it's set up and what it accomplishes and how it sets the tone for the whole movie is absolutely amazing. That was by far my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Yeah, I have a hard time picking a favorite action scene in this movie. That was definitely a contender. It might actually have to be the bar fight. When Pedro Pascal's character gets into it and you see the lasso kind of get into the fight, like I thought that was unexpected to see the lasso fighting. It felt like it was definitely a next step that they added to it. Like the car chase was absolutely amazing, definitely an incredible scene, and just kind of a great reminder of who the characters were and what they're doing. But I liked the Statesman and what they added to this movie. And bringing sort of the American brothers into this, along with the Kingsman, was a really cool addition. I was a little surprised we didn't see Channing Tatum actually kind of get into the mix a little bit more.
I was disappointed by that, to be perfectly honest with you. I was really hoping to see more of him. I actually expected him to come in and even up the odds. No, I guess it wasn't even up. I expected Whiskey to beat Eggsy a little bit, and or somehow get the upper hand with cheating and get the upper hand on Eggsy, and then have Tequila come in and kind of like even up the odds and save the day, and that didn't happen. Like he just stayed on ice the whole damn time.
Right. He got a little dance number in though.
Yeah, which was great. It was his scenes that he was in were fantastic, and I love the teaser at the end with him.
Yeah,
I thought that was great. Like I want to see a Channing Tatum Kingsman movie.
Right.
For sure. Like I want to see him partner up with Eggsy in the Kingsman. I think that would be hilarious. Like that would be probably even better than 21 Jump Street, but we didn't get that yet.
Yeah.
So I there's hope. There's tease of that. I don't know if we'll ever actually get that, but I wonder how much he got paid to do that movie because he wasn't in it very much.
No, he really wasn't. But he stole his scenes for sure when he was in it. So some of the comedy of this movie definitely some great stuff. The villain plot I think provided a lot of that comedy this time around. Just because of just how crazy the virus was, starting out with just how you had the visual aspect with the blue veins, and then you had everybody just doing the weird crazy dancing, which was just absolutely hilarious to watch.
They had this guy, the guy when they're doing
when she's doing her
scene,
announcement, yeah.
and explaining to the president of the United States, who was played brilliantly by Bruce Greenwood, one of my favorite actors. I've loved him since I've seen him in a show that I don't think anybody else I know has ever seen. It was called Nowhere Man, and it was on UPN when UPN was like brand new. It was in this great show, and he played this photographer who took this weird picture of something that the CIA was doing, and they wiped his memory, and they're coming after to try and kill him now because of this picture. And he's trying to like put the pieces together of what happened. It's a fantastic like spy thriller TV show. It was way ahead of its time, and he was great, and I've loved him ever since then. But anyways, he plays a brilliant Donald Trump, George Bush-esque kind of, over the top Republican character. And so she's explaining it to him, but there's this dude in the back, and I swear to God, he looks just like who's the director for Edward Scissorhands?
Tim Burton.
Tim Burton. He looks just like Tim Burton.
With an afro? Not even with much of an afro.
It's an afro. It's just like Tim Burton. It looks like Tim Burton with his crazy ass hair. And he's doing like this crazy dance. And you got Elton John down on the other side of the screen. And it's like...
Elton John berating his guard.
You don't know who to look at. It's so confusing. It's so overwhelmingly funny and entertaining. It's brilliant. It's typical Matthew Vaughn, where like there's so much going on at the same time you're not sure. Like you kind of need to see it a couple times to catch it all. But oh my God, I laughed so hard at that dude dancing. It was, I don't know who it was, but he deserves an Oscar for that, for sure. Forget Left Shark. I want that guy.
Yeah, he's definitely the Hall of Dancing fame with Left Shark. Elton John also gets some cool moments. Saturday
so good.
Was just a great sequence too, when he drop kicks his guards and gets into the fight and it starts interfering with the robot dogs. I mean, just absolutely amazing. I've been like J Mike, my roommate and producer has been hanging out. But every time I see him, it's like we start singing Saturday every Saturday.
It's so much fun. That was just that was a brilliant addition, having Elton John, because that's a callback to the first movie, right? Where they're like, we don't know where Elton is.
Well, I think he was captured by Samuel L. Jackson's character, and I think Poppy even said at one point
there's some sort of callback. I snagged him.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah. So
I mean, there's a lot of great callbacks. There's a great callback to the butt sex joke,
right?
With Elton John, that's really, really funny. And I know like a lot of people were kind of put off in the first movie by the butt sex joke,
right?
And kind
of. I thought it was funny. It worked in this movie. This movie's irreverent. Matthew Vaughn reminds me a little bit of like Tarantino light, and. It's a little bit more action oriented than Tarantino's a little more dialogue oriented, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he's a little more like Rodriguez.
Yeah, I can see
that. In that he's got Rodriguez's sensibilities for action, and he has Kevin Smith's sensibilities for humor.
Yeah,
it's really what it is. It's like this weird marriage between those two, and it's great. Like it works really well. So but I know there's some people that were upset about that, but it plays really nicely into the beginning of the movie with Eggsy's relationship with her. And how that's going and how that's evolved and actually become like this serious relationship, and it carries throughout the entire movie and motivates him throughout the entire movie. So I thought they did a masterful job of like taking something that I know like was somewhat controversial for a lot of people and turning that into like a major plot point and a believable, workable plot point.
Well, I like that Vaughn is able to be subversive without, and he's definitely over the top, but it doesn't even with some people getting offended by that joke, I don't feel like he goes into territory that's just like, oh, like this isn't earned. Like it feels appropriate to the character, to the type of people that we're dealing with. But he also is like, he's really good at sort of being very honest with also who these characters are, because it's funny because, obviously this the Kingsman franchise is sort of subverting a lot of the tropes that we commonly see with Bond movies or other spy movies, particularly Bond, obviously with the the British connection, but it. And I think I was listening to Mark Bernardin, and he was kind of saying that it's a little bit more inspired by the Roger Moore Bond movies, especially in terms of structure and pacing and everything.
I guess.
But it's what I find fascinating is that a lot of the stuff that we just kind of like, oh, excuse Bond for being because he's classy and has an accent, and Eggsy's a little bit more of a street thug. Like there's a much more like. There's more heart with Eggsy than Bond ever had, to be perfectly honest.
For sure, for sure.
And
but there's also
really
a lot more
appreciate
personality too.
Yes.
There's a lot more personality in Eggsy. I mean, Bond really barely has a personality.
Yeah, he's there just to be badass. Yeah.
Or charming. He's either charming or he's badass.
Right.
There's really not
and deliver some one-liners and have some over-the-top Bond, style villains. So, but this does it with adding, some comedy and adding some heart to it as well. So, I was immensely happy with the follow-up. What do you think? Do you think there is room for a third movie in this?
Like, a trilogy?
Yeah. Or do you think?
Yeah, for sure.
I see. It's interesting. Like I won't say no to a third movie, but I'd be perfectly fine if this was it for the Kingsman movies at the same time.
Here's the thing. This thing is making money hand over fist.
So it's got to be a third.
how do you not make a third?
Yeah.
Like, if this thing does half as well as I expect it to do, I can't imagine that they won't make a third. Even if they don't get Matthew Vaughn, they'll get somebody to make a third.
Well, that was what I was going to say the condition was, because I think Vaughn is going to be in even heavier demand after this movie.
Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah, probably. But I mean, Paramount just got $1 million for JJ to walk to go to Star Wars.
Right.
I'm sure there's money in Hollywood. You can find find it if you can give him a good script and you give him a good a big enough bag of cash, he'll do it. You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't he? He's already done 2 of them. Why wouldn't he do the third?
Right.
Unless he feels like he doesn't have anything else to say. But I mean, like you pointed out and Bernardin pointed out, I mean, this is just a modern analog to James Bond. Like, there's no end of stories that you can do with these characters.
That's true. There's so many Bond movies to really pick from that they could kind of piece together other pieces from various Bond movies and iterations of him. So some of the rest of the cast, we had Jeff Bridges as sort of the head of the Statesman. Turned in a small performance, but it was worthwhile.
It's perfect.
Yeah, Colin Firth obviously returned. Mark Strong as Merlin was definitely again a another great character to have return to this franchise, and make his way out. Sadly.
That one broke my heart.
I know, right? Well, that was an interesting thing because so that piece, obviously they're singing, "Take Me Home, Country Road" when he after he sacrifices himself on a landmine for Eggsy and Harry to go in and fight. It was always kind of funny though because that song kept on playing at different times throughout the movie. Throughout the soundtrack. This was also an incredible soundtrack. You mentioned Prince.
Mm-hmm.
We had Elton John with Saturday, and we had this, and it was a very weird song to kind of put into this movie about British spies. I mean, sure, you're introducing the Americans into this mix, but still, it was sort of, but it felt so appropriate, and I don't know what it was.
Well, it has a very like Scottish, I guess Irish, old Danny boy kind of feel to that song,
right?
It's hill country song for so it really works tying that to Merlin's character for me. They did a great job of tying that in for sure. And you're right, the soundtrack was really good, one of the best soundtracks we've had since I don't know.
We've had a couple good soundtracks lately, to be perfectly honest. I mean, the Guardians
Yeah.
soundtracks have been really good.
Well,
So,
yeah, that's a good point. That's a
Yeah.
good point. But this one was really good,
Yeah.
really on point.
Yeah.
Made sense. All the songs made sense for where they were using them, and the orchestration was great. I was noticing that throughout the film of like, this is just like the music beats are just right. Like it's telling the story. It's there. And sometimes it's a character in the film, and sometimes it's just subtly moving the plot along. And it was great, man. Whoever did that, I guess you give that credit to the director, but it was good. It was really good.
So any other thoughts about this movie before we wrap up?
I never thought I'd see a fingering scene in a major motion picture where I was like, wow, we are real, like, and you zoom right into the panties and right into the vagina. I never thought I would see that. There it was. I look forward to my son being old enough.
Well, that sounds like a great out right there. So don't forget, you can let us know what you think about the movie. Just go to any of our social media while you're there. Also check out our website and all the different feeds for all three of our shows: Certain Point of View, Another Pass, and the Scruffy Nerf Herders. All of that is on our website, certainpov.com. And until next week, stay scruffy, my Nerf Herders.
Thanks for listening to Certain Point of View. Don't miss an episode. Just subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on iTunes. Head over to certainpov.com.